of the January 9th Downtown Development Authority. Susan, please call the roll.
Happy to do so. Newcomb Clark. Here. Russ Collins. Bob Gunsel.
Here.
Lee Gunn.
Here.
Roger Hewitt.
Here.
John Heapja.
Here.
Joe Lowenstein. Here. John Moab.
Here.
Nader Nassif. Keith Orr. Sandy Smith.
Here.
John Switt.
You'll be coming, I
We
think.
have a quorum.
John is here.
Okay,
John
thank
is
you.
here. Great. Okay. The first item on our agenda is audience participation. And the first person who has signed up to speak is Elizabeth Riggs from the Huron River Watershed Council. Please approach the podium. You have 4 minutes.
Hi. Good afternoon. Is this? Yeah. Do you need it? Can you?
We can
okay,
hear
great.
you.
Good afternoon. Hi. Thank you for the time today. I am with the Huron River Watershed Council, and today I would like to share with you information about an initiative that we are a partner on, which is called River Up. And in front of you is a report and a plan for the next few years that we've put together with our partners. This is a presentation that was suggested after meeting with Susan Polly a couple of times, myself and Laura Rubin, our director, to talk about any potential collaborations there might be with this initiative. So today, really, I just wanted to introduce this project to you and start a dialogue and invite future communication with myself and our team working on the project and with the DDA board. So a brief summary or background of what River Up is. It's nothing short of a renaissance for the Huron River. So we're thinking big. This is a project that involves my organization, and we were brought on to the team by the Michigan League of Conservation Voters, the National Wildlife Federation, and a group of community and business leaders called Wolfpack. That group had worked in the past on different environmental issues at a state and national level, and this is the first initiative to look at one of our great assets in our own backyard, the Huron River. So it made sense to bring on the Watershed Council, since we've been around since 1965, working to protect the river and the whole system, and work with our communities and stakeholders in the watershed for a sustainable future for the river. The River Up initiative, as I said, is this bold initiative. It's to create a vehicle for turning our communities on the river to face the river, a new Main Street, if you will. Because in the past we had a river that really has been a working river, and it showed the signs of that. So part of the Clean Water Act and our understanding of our impact on the river, it was a place that understandably our communities wanted to put their backs to. It wasn't a particularly clean or good-smelling river. But really, in the last few decades, we've had quite a turnaround. This river is now something to celebrate. It is the only river in this part of Michigan that has a natural river designation. And clearly, you all know about how important it is to this community for recreation, for a place for respite, and it really can be part of the economic engine, the placemaking, if you will, for Ann Arbor and other river towns on the river. And when I refer to those river towns, I'm talking about places like Milford, Dexter, Ypsilanti, Flat Rock. So we're looking at the whole system as it makes its way to the Huron River. But a renaissance for the river could be very broad. So we've tried to really take a look at 3 specific areas for making River Up effective. And that is 3 areas. We call them fix up, clean up, build up. Briefly, fix up means investing in the river to make it an even better place for recreation and making it safer, more accessible. A main way that we're doing that is through the creation of the Huron River Water Trail, an inland paddling trail 104 miles long that already has a lot of work that's been done on it in terms of fixing up portages, putting in consistent wayfinding, and within a few weeks we'll also have a new waterproof flip book that is a continuous map of the Huron River for river recreation. So we're excited about that and a lot of other things that will be happening in that fix-up area. Cleanup is, as you might expect, it's really to support ecological improvement of the river. And that's been focused on a couple of specific things. One is to help move forward the DTE Broadway cleanup, and get a nice project there in the end that is really an amenity for the city and helps to engender that connection between the river and downtown and the community.
Would you finish up? Please?
Sure. And then another project in Ypsilanti that is a similar kind of cleanup effort. So there are a number of projects we're doing in Ann Arbor. I'm happy to talk with you about them. They tend to focus on fixing up the recreation access to the river, and we've been working extensively with the city staff and with our partners, and look forward to any potential collaborations that we can think of with this group.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much. Our next person on the agenda is Ingrid Alt from the Ann Arbor Parks Advisory Commission.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for allowing me to spend a couple of minutes with you. I'm here primarily because I attended the Connecting William Street forum last Thursday, and I kind of wanted to give you an update with what Parks has been doing behind the scenes so that you will better understand how we're approaching this. Our takeaway from that meeting, and there were three of us here, Bob Gallardi, Alan Jackson, and myself, was basically that there was a lot of support for some kind of open space in the downtown. No real consensus one way or the other. It was a very spirited discussion, which we were really excited to have been able to be here to witness it. Because for us, one of the things we did recently was we had a retreat, and we sat down and we talked about what is our work plan for the next year. What are we going to focus on? And one of the things that we did was we had a subcommittee formed to talk about downtown open space. I serve on that, and so does Alan Jackson. And what we're doing is we're sort of going to inventory what's already in place. And we're going to walk the different parks, talk about what works, what doesn't work, before we start really looking at what maybe we would want to add. As a note, in case you don't know, we have 157 parks in Ann Arbor. And one of the things that we're very concerned about is adding space that has no active use. That's become a really important topic for us to make sure that if we're going to add some space, how is it going to be used? Because we don't want to add space that just sits empty. So at this point, we are very much in the early discussions. We have talked about the different land uses in the Connecting William Street area, and it came up with no general consensus. Everybody had different ideas. So we are beginning the conversation at a more detailed level. It's on our agenda that I believe is next, I always forget, Tuesday. Tuesday at 4 o'clock. So we will begin the conversation. And mostly I'm here just to give you an update so that you know how we're planning to approach this, because we feel that our next step is to help provide you with information so that we can move forward in a very thoughtful manner in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person in line, Francis Todaro from the State Street Association. Welcome, Francis. You are the new executive director, I take it? Or?
Yes, Tom is still officially around for a year, but we will be spending 2013 together to help transition.
Congratulations.
So,
Thank you.
I am here to speak to you, following Ingrid is rather appropriate. Our interest is in the idea that there would be a request there being made for more parks downtown. And we would like to take some time to focus on the existing park that is downtown, which is Liberty Plaza Park. And I know over the years we've struggled with making this park successful on a consistent basis. There's been spurts here and there where we've cleaned it up and it's worked for a few months. I remember years ago when we would have people have lunch sessions in the park and folks would gather there. The SAC lunch came from that, Sonic Lunch, which is a hugely successful program for a few days out of the year. But we would really be interested in having this park maintain that success on a consistent basis. And we would appreciate the focus being on that success prior to any additional parks being brought online. We feel that there would be a lot learned by solving the existing problem of Liberty Plaza Park and learning from those solutions to create further best practices for successful downtowns. It would be, I think, hugely beneficial to the existing community that's here, and it would definitely help us on State Street maintain our future vision of a clean and safe community. And so we would just like to put that on your plate when you're considering the things that are going to be put before you in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Frances. And the last person on our list is Eileen Tyler, who lives in the downtown area.
Snagged that last spot, didn't I? Okay, well, thank you for giving me the spot, and I'll watch the clock. I'll leave my statement with you so you have that. So I attended, this is about the Connecting William. I finally got around to attended the January 3rd meeting, although I wasn't able to stay till the end for the Q&A, so I thought, well, this would be an opportunity to come and make one point that I thought would be useful. As I see, you have a resolution to approve it, but this is something I thought could improve it. So I've read a lot about it already, and I agree that the city should be proactive in defining the opportunities for development that are compatible with the central area plan and quality of life for downtown, promoting quality of life downtown. And I support that it has included a greenway streetscape connection between downtown and campus, dead ending at State Street. I have walked that all the time I've ever lived in Ann Arbor. I appreciate that you've engaged local design professionals to interpret and illustrate the ideas and opportunities that are coming out of the project, and I do respect their work. However, I do not see any actual connecting going on, especially along William Street. To encourage and ultimately require developers to follow through in their responses to requests for proposal, the plan needs to be more articulate in this detailed aspect. So I say add elements to the streetscape that are actual nodes or oases along the route. These are essential to break up the linear street that is currently only shown as a straight and narrow chute with a little bit of green cover along the street edge. Include benches, changes in paving material, additional greenery, and other features of interest. Add weight to this requirement by including the graphic interpretation now, so that developers can see visual options of expected improvements and not defer to zoning, which in D1 requires no setback. This makes absolutely no sense. The variability must be demanded by example and then reinforced by holding developers to this requirement when reviewing their proposals. So, my other hat, we are running into this problem on the northern side of downtown, where the developer for the 413 East Huron project shows no setbacks along Huron or Division Street. So far, staff has supported the developer's proposal and ignored our request and concern about adequate setbacks for the public right-of-way. In fighting this narrow interpretation of the zoning ordinance, our committee very much wants to point to the Connecting William project as an example of a positive force from the city to do the right thing. Lawyers and developers are too quick to use precedents as their sole argument being made against the requirement to provide better design, so it is important to improve any and all guidelines that they will be using to comply with expectations and to apply for approval for their projects. While it's not a public park, the pedestrian right-of-way along William Street must clearly show how it will link the edges of downtown together and at the same time provide a green buffer at the southern edge of downtown. So making it a place for people means telling developers and reminding staff that nodes for dialogue and oases for respite will be crucial to the successful design of the entire length of the street. And make sure this aspect of good urban design is represented in your final documents.
Thank you.
So should I do this?
Oh, yes, that would be perfect.
And I can send it,
We'll make copies. Thank you, Eileen. Okay. The next item is reports from city boards and commissions. Ray Detter from the Citizens Area, Downtown Area Citizens Advisory
Downtown Area
Council.
Citizens Advisory Council.
There you go.
Well, last night's CAC meeting was largely one of reaffirmation of several of our positions on development in the downtown. We reaffirmed our commitment to public art in the downtown, which has had some recent discussion, and also throughout our city. We also reaffirmed our commitment of support for the work that the DDA has done in involving the public in shaping the goals, objectives, and processes for future development of the 5 important publicly owned sites in the downtown. Particularly their support, although not absolutely total, for a broad range of residential as well as office and commercial issues. At the same time, in relationship to what Eileen Tyler has just said, we also reaffirmed our strong opposition to the student high-rise at 413 North Huron. I'm just going to briefly try to weave these things together. We do admire the Connecting William Street's commitment to good architecture in the new buildings to be constructed on downtown city-owned sites. And many of us agree that the best public art we can have in the downtown is in the area of good buildings well designed. Good architecture is good public art. And we want to encourage that. We also at the same time want to encourage pedestrian-friendly streetscapes, which are also a part of that. Some of those streetscapes are historic. Just think of the first National Building, the Glacier Building, the Nichols Arcade, much of the streetscape of Main Street, and also the streetscape of State Street. And we want to preserve that public art at the same time that we have new public art in the form of good architecture in the downtown. We believe in good design, and the CAC, Citizens Advisory Council, also played a major part in encouraging the development of downtown design guidelines, and also in the creation of Downtown Design Guidelines Review Board. We are very pleased that future developers, we are very pleased that for future projects in the 5 downtown public sites, the Connecting William Street recommendations will ask the Planning Commission to report to City Council how future developers consider changes in their design street recommendations in response to the Design Review Board process. In other words, right now, when you have a Design Review Board process, it's voluntary, it will remain voluntary, but at this particular point, there's little discussion at the planning level and also the City Council with regard to the specifics involved with the things that that Design Review Board suggested that they might do. And we want to see that done in the same way that Connecting William Street project is suggesting that it's done. And the DDA's Connecting William Street recommendations on density and massing. A future building on city-owned downtown lots makes clear, and I quote, that surrounding context should be considered and buildings should be designed to step back from lower-scale neighbors. Those of us on the CAC believe that what the DDA's proposed Connecting William Street pattern will require for developments on what is city-owned property should also be required for all new buildings in the downtown, while keeping it voluntary, simply strengthening it so that it has more teeth in terms of the nature of getting that good public art that is good architecture. And that includes the proposed massive student high-rise at 401 East Huron, because that doesn't meet those requirements. Eileen Tyler has already suggested some of the problems with it. Our downtown plans includes a section on development, character, and sensitivity to context, and establishes a goal. This is quotation. Encourage design approaches which minimize the extent to which high-rise buildings create negative impacts in terms of scale, shading, and blocking views. The city's central area plan recognizes potential conflicts in areas where the downtown commercial core meets low-scale downtown residential areas. In the case of 401, 413 East Huron, our Historic District Commission, you may have read in the newspapers, recently passed a resolution calling 413 East Huron incompatible in scale and massing with the adjacent 04th Ward Historic District, and would severely and adversely impact the district. Architecture, we believe, that has a negative impact upon its neighbors is not good architecture. And I finally end up with this final statement. 2 of our members in the CAC also live in Sloan Plaza, and their sunlight is going to be gone forever. Architecture that threatens negatively the impact of people living within the area of downtown has to be seriously considered with regard to the nature of rejecting it if we're going to move ahead with regard to something that comes together in something. Let's make the whole downtown a good expression of public art. Thanks.
Thank you, Ray. Are there communications from DDA members? This is John.
One quick thing. Some of you may be aware that at Watts, Washington Area Transportation Study, that our executive director, Terry Blackmore, resigned. She's taking a position out in Colorado at the MPO, and I think it's Front Range MPO.
Yeah, exactly.
So she's actually, as of last Monday.
Last week. Yeah.
I think Monday. The moving truck came Saturday, and she flew out Monday, and she's away. But there is work on the transition plan. Ryan Buck will be taking over as interim and a search will go on. Lee Graydon is taking the lead and working on that. And people feel pretty comfortable that things will move along pretty smoothly, but it's going to be a transition. I think Terry had been there something like 32 years. So we wish her the best.
Yeah.
We just want to make you aware of change in our community.
Thank you, John. Any other comments? Mayor? Yeah.
Just to follow up on the comments we heard regarding Liberty Plaza, as you may recall, we've just in the beginning stages of an effort to take a new look at that park and leading to a redesign and a rebuild, actually. And some of the park staff have developed a preliminary timeline, and I would expect that we're going to hear more about that as time goes on. But there'll certainly be an opportunity for lots of inputs. I greatly appreciated the comments that we had today. I think that it is an issue. While I'm pretty comfortable in the park and been going down there and hanging out there for a long time, there are community members who feel uncomfortable in that park. And we have to respect that and do what we can, I think, to change the park so that it is more inviting to all of our residents. So it's a project that we'll be receiving a whole lot of public comment, and as we go forward in making it the best little space that it can be.
Thank you.
As a follow-up to that, as a member of the State Street Board, I think that we all would like to thank First Martin for everything that they do with that park, all the money that they spend and all the time that they devote to doing the best job they can with it.
Yes. Sandy?
I would just like to address, I think, Tyler's points, and I appreciate the wanting the clarity on the drawings and the pieces that go into the report themselves. And it's something we've struggled with. It's hard that we found. We started with very blocky buildings, so that people didn't say, I don't like this. I don't like the level. I don't like the color of that building or whatever. We struggle with going forward, and so by giving it a little bit more detail here, we end up almost designing a building which isn't meant to be there at all. I mean, an architect will come in, as you know, and do something completely different. And but then yet we attempt to draw a streetscape and leave those components missing out of it, which you speak of, and which is in our intent to have a very detailed plan as we go forward on the Williams Street. So it's that fine balance of how much information do you put out that people respond to on the details that aren't part of a design that's there yet at all. So I really appreciate you saying, we've gone this far, we need to, if we're going to do this, we need to maybe take that next step and just add that little bit more possible detail in there.
And possibly you could put it in the narrative that it's a necessary component of the plan,
Yep.
and the site's individual.
We don't have dialogue.
I'm engaging you, but
We know that what you have said.
But it is
we
something.
have-
Yes, but I
We're
appreciate
working on
that
it.
because it's been a struggle for us on that level of detail, and I appreciate it.
Thank you both.
But I'll add, I'm sorry.
Joan, go ahead.
I would add to that the fact that it's not in there isn't because we haven't considered it. And we did have a lot of meetings about the whole streetscape part, which, by the way, we think that the DDA will take a huge part in developing that streetscape as opposed to having the developer doing it. And that would be an incentive to a developer. But I love your use of the word oases along there, because it really is kind of the concept that we want to get as dividing up William Street and making it attractive to bring people. So thank you for pointing all that out.
Yes, we are very appreciative of that, and we will copy this for all the board members. Thank you, Eileen. Anything
I think
further?
Joan covered.
Oh, okay.
On a
Roger?
completely different.
On a completely different subject, Roger Hewitt.
We yesterday had a connector study meeting of the steering committee and received a report on the first public outreach, which occurred in early December, and I think about 6 different locations.
Yep.
Susan was part of it, so we got Susan out to Briarwood Mall.
During Christmas shopping time.
First time ever.
And these were just to gauge the public response to the concept of a connector and what sort of means of transit people found interesting. The orders of importance were more frequent service and longer service, and also reducing emissions were the three top items mentioned as far as priorities go. People got to put dots on maps on where they visited, and there was probably the largest number was certainly centered in the downtown area, which is also good. We displayed 4 different types of modes. Actually, I think 5. Anyway, there's clear, I think, well over 80, close to 90% wanted some sort of an enhanced system, whether it's light rail, streetcar, rapid transit bus, monorail, but the overwhelming response was that some level of upgraded system over the current bus system was, say, overwhelmingly supported. Around, I think current bus was like only 7% of the total. So it clearly shows the community was engaged. I think there are about 275 respondents overall. So we got a pretty good first start. I'll keep people posted on the next outreach, which will be in a few months.
Thank you, Roger. Any other comments from DDA board members? Okay, I would like a motion to approve the minutes of the December 5th board meeting. So moved. Support. Any corrections or additions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Subcommittee reports, Partnerships and Economic Development Committee. Sandy Joe, who's on?
Well, I think we're going to talk about our partnerships, and we just had a partnerships meeting this morning, so it should be pretty fresh in our minds. We're going to deviate from the order here a little bit and just do a couple of the resolutions that can go pretty quickly first, and then we'll get to our more in detail presentation on the Connecting William Street. So first, let's go from the bottom up and talk about for our resolution to approve funds for energy saving grant project administration and energy audits. That's on page 12. And I want to thank Susan and Jada and Amber for getting all of this together. Some of this agenda had to be put together in the few minutes between partnership and this meeting, so thanks for our able staff for doing that. All of you probably remember our energy grants that have been very, very successful in allowing people to get some money for energy grants, because and I know the mayor can add more perhaps on this, the PACE program, which is a similar program where people can get money through the city or credits through the city, is going a little more slowly than might have been anticipated. There is more that we can do to give incentives to people to improve the sustainability and energy parts of their businesses. And so what this resolution does is creates money for our DDA energy engineer, that is of course Dave Conkle, with whom we contract to do these kinds of things, and having funding for additional energy audits for some of the people who might not have gotten to do it the last time. Dave would also consult with many of the people who have had energy audits and help them to figure out what their priorities are and where they can get the money and that sort of thing. So this is really a continuation of the kind of progressive energy initiatives that we've done before with the energy audits. So I'll give you just a second to read over that, and then I'll move to
Support.
this resolution. Okay, any questions?
And just to add on, the beauty of what he does is to help small business and building owners facilitate the work that's outlined in an audit. So it's sometimes very challenging for a small business to make that leap, to understand where to get the financing and the credits. And so that is something that Dave can help navigate and coach the business owners through.
Right, sort of an energy concierge service.
Yep.
Comments, John?
The question, the $40,000 for energy audits, how many audits approximately would that cover on average based on our experience?
They're $2,000 to $5,000.
I don't remember what they
range
average.
from about $2,000 to $5,000. We've set a cap with the idea of spreading around more of these dollars. So assuming, let's say, an average of $3,000, we might get, approximately 15 audits out of this, thereabouts, maybe a little bit more. It's not meant that we're going to make sure everybody gets one as we did the last time, but it's still another series of businesses that have not yet had one.
It's just, since it's a limited amount of money, we may want to even tighten that cap of 5,000. It's 5,000, obviously, we only get 8 of them, and so something to think about.
Sure, absolutely. That's good advice.
Any further comment? Yes, Roger.
This is to come out of this year's budget?
Yes.
TIF money.
TIF money.
Any other comment?
Mayor?
John?
Oh, yeah, and I appreciate Councilmember, or Board Member
As I always say,
Lansky's
the formerly honorable.
formerly still honorable comments. Yeah, the PACE program has probably not gone as quickly as we thought, but I think you have to recognize that it's the first in the state, and that we actually pushed and developed the legislation that even enabled it in the state. But there's good news to report. The PACE program is pretty close to going out for their first bonding, and they've had a very, I would say, excited response from local banks who want to take part in this innovative program and purchase the bonds. So that's some of the excitement around it, and it really offers a lot of promise, and there's a bunch of companies that want to take part, and it's moving along now. But again, a little slow, working through the regulatory hurdles that are in place both federally and statewide. It has been taking a little longer than anticipated. But I also heard from David Conkle last night at the Energy Commission meeting. And he, just as an aside, he made a nice presentation that I don't think we've had yet, because the Energy Commission wants to see it, about the electric car charging stations and how they're just taken off, and tremendous use of them. And so that's a good thing, and yet very, very low cost for the DDA. But I wanted to propose an additional resolve clause that would recognize a practice that is already there, and the resolve would state, resolve the DDA will consult and work with the city PACE program staff, because there's a great deal of synergy that can be gained, and it's already happening, so this would just recognize that that's going on.
All right.
Friendly.
Friendly. Okay, everyone agrees it's friendly. Is there any further discussion on this motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Thank you.
All right. Sandy, you want to take the next one?
You're doing fine.
The next one is a resolution to approve a grant for Dawn Farm. That is on page 9. And we have also, I think this group as a whole has heard about this before. I can't remember I think we've talked about it as coming from partnerships before. This is something that Dawn Farm came to us to ask for money that would help them refinance their existing property, and would enable them to acquire additional transitional housing units, and also free up money that can be used for their services that are very much in the downtown area. So I'd like to move this resolution.
Support.
And I'll give you a second to read through that and see if anyone has any questions about this request from Dawn Farm. It's a $150,000 grant from our housing fund.
Both of these properties are within 1/4 mile of the DDA.
They're on Chapin, they're in.
Beeks and stuff.
So they're
Oh, they are on
Beeks.
Beeks?
It's a Chapin's
Beeks and
project.
Summit.
Oh, Chapin, okay.
They are?
But they are, yes,
They
they
are.
are located within 1/4 mile of our district boundary.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Independent of all the work that they do, what was nice about what we saw them prepare is they had pretty detailed capital expenditure and depreciation schedules. And they've been, at least in what they showed, they've been year after year setting aside things for particular line items, say roofs, say windows, say driveways and landscaping. And we get a lot of these requests, and we often ask to see that because we like to respond to, for lack of a better term, bricks and mortars, and show that there's some competency and some rigor in that planning, which we all could potentially do personally, but when it comes to public funds, should be a requirement, and certainly that's to set precedence, but I liked and I applaud their ability to very quickly provide documentation that they have been doing this, and paying off debt isn't necessarily something that I think we should always get in the habit of, but given they've done all that rigor and their interest rates for this debt, it seemed very clear that they could be putting the money towards other things, and we're not just backfilling perhaps a legacy of we didn't save for things that we knew were going to come up for roofs and windows and things like that. So it's always refreshing to see when organizations are doing that and have been doing it as a best practice, and it makes it a lot easier, at least from my perspective, to approve these rather quickly without contention.
Any further comment?
A question, and I don't know if anybody has the answer to this at the table. How does Don Farm, how are they financed in terms of, they don't receive money because they are providing housing at 30% AMI, et cetera? Their funding sources are different than that?
Susan probably can.
Susan, could you address that?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I know. Years ago, I was on their board, and I wish I had retained. Those of you serving on boards, I'm sure you're memorizing everything that presented to you. I believe that they have a series of funding sources, and all these various streams make it possible for them to serve a number of different kinds of people. So, as an example, they have people coming to them for services who have full insurances, who need no subsidy. There are others that are indigent. And so income and all of that is something that's considered as a piece of this. What they require is if they have individuals who are coming to them for services, they set forward a few requirements that I think lead to the answer to your question. One is they must immediately get a job. And they are given only a short period of time to do it. They're also immediately signed up for AA meetings, and I think there's something close to 8 meetings a week. So there's almost no time other than work or AA meetings that these individuals are committing themselves to. And that work, Jim said to me along the way, it's unbelievable how few people, including during a Michigan economic downturn, have not been able to find a job. And some of it is because of the commitment of the recovering community to help one another, but some of it is the absolute commitment of the individuals. So as to whether or not it's income qualified or not, I can't speak to that with any great detail. But I do know that these are individuals who are working because they have to as a part of being part of the program.
Yeah, my concerns with this grant, as I think that I've voiced in committee, are that I see Don Farms as more of an outreach program than a housing program per se. And again, if this were the housing and outreach fund, I would be more willing to tap it. But I have concerns about tapping it for Don Farms, although I think that what Don Farms does is marvelous.
Okay, thank you.
They did mention that they are directly adding beds in terms of freeing up the cash to do it. They're at 159,
I understand.
Okay.
Any further comments? Are you ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, you're opposed?
Yes, I'm
Thank you, John. Okay, it passes. Continue on, Sandy and Joan.
All right.
I think it's time?
I think so. Well, we have our the grant policy, so do you want to handle that?
Sure. So on page 6, we have a resolution that I would like to move regarding a grant policy within for the city-owned properties located within the connecting William Street area.
Support.
Been moved and supported.
The policy itself is on 7 and 8. It mimics the brownfield policy. Of course, none of these properties are brownfield eligible properties, so that component is not in there. But it does establish elements, public elements, which we would consider being items that would qualify a project for a grant. We do talk about a 17 to 25% of the TIF capture being used as a calculator. This is not something that the DDA will not forego TIF, but it will be used to calculate the amount of a grant. At no time, similar to the brownfield, at no time will TIF money be paid out unless it's been paid in, so we will never be in arrears on this. The DDA reserves the right to pace the payments out according to our schedule that benefits the DDA. And then on page 8, you'll see 11 items that are criteria that would be used to decide whether or not the project would be something that the DDA would invest in. Number 1, continuing to be whether the project addresses a particular gap in the marketplace, meaning the project on its own, that's not exactly, the project is not following a regular pattern of other investments. So right now, we would be unlikely to fund a high-rise of multifamily housing units, like a 6-bedroom housing apartment complex. So we would be unlikely to facilitate a project like that with grant money, if that's clear. But we would do something that may be large office plate, because that's something that's lacking in the downtown. It's a gap that's not being addressed in the current marketplace.
Any comments, questions about this resolution?
I should note that it's modeled on what we did for our brownfield criteria. So there are some tweaks in it, but in its concept, it really is pretty much similar to what we did with brownfield, to create a template for people, because developers are always going to come to us for money, and we just want to give the criteria for what they have to meet if they hope to get any.
John?
I think it might be helpful for people who don't have this document in front of them, Sandy, to describe the element, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements, the circles, because all these represent enhancements to the vision of the William Street project. And there's been a lot of discussion about what does that mean.
Right.
It seems as though it might be helpful for some folks to hear those items.
Right. So through this grant, the DDA aims to support elements of a project that offer prioritized public benefits, and that's really a stressor as well. Helping downtown developers advance projects that are in alignment with the community's goals while maximizing sale proceeds to the city. Such elements include, but are not limited to, number 1 is connectivity and walkability improvements, which include streetscape, sidewalk, bike facility improvements. Number 2 is environmental design features, be it green roofs or rain gardens, some of the elements that we've repeatedly heard are important, that the public sees as an important element, that are easy to be left off of large-scale development. Number 3 is significant architecture and design investments, which is also a piece that the community keeps speaking to, is the quality of the architecture of the building. Exterior feature or overall design that improves walkability on adjacent sidewalks, enhances the quality of an area, and or brings significant design prestige. Number 4, landscaping in plazas or urban open spaces that are available and designed for public use, but maintained and managed privately. And where am I? Number 5, infrastructure investments, which could include upsizing water, storm or sewer mains, adding electrical, trash, and fire hydrant capacity to serve a larger area. Meaning that it may be for not the development we're looking at, but also this may be the last person in on a particular piece of infrastructure. By investing in it now, we might add capacity for the next development down the street. So those are the 5 components.
Okay. Newcomb.
And this only applies to the 4 parcels. So if DTE came along and said, hey, we're in the William Street, we're across from these 2 parcels, can we use this? This would not necessarily fall under this, they would have to apply.
Right, it's a city-owned properties.
And just in William Street.
City-owned properties in the William Street area.
Okay.
Yes, Roger.
On the TIF capture, it appears that's for an indefinite length of time.
For the calculator.
The calculator. I guess I would suggest that there be some time limit, such as 10 years, on the amount of what that TIF capture could be, rather than leaving it open-ended, which could be, essentially go out forever.
Is that a request for amendment?
Yeah, I guess I would request that. I also have a question on the payout of that TIF capture. If it's a 25% of the TIF, that means we are not going to pay out more than 25% of the TIF we receive in a grant. So if it, say, is 25% of the TIF for 10 years, we're going to be writing a check every year for 25% of the TIF we receive. Would that be correct?
The 17 to 25% of whatever period we establish
Of whatever
is
period, right.
used as a calculator. Later on in it, we do talk about specifically the mechanism of payment out, so it'll never be more than what we've collected in. And then we have the right to structure the payment out in whatever fashion we have. If it's front-loaded or elongated, probably based on your committee's recommendations of how we would structure that.
Yeah, my only concern is that if we pay all the money out front, and then a project goes bankrupt and it gets its assessment reduced, our TIF would potentially go down, or potentially the cities would go down, and essentially we'd be paying out a grant that we would not be receiving money for. We'd be paying out more than the 25%.
So in the second to last bullet, if awarded, the total DDA grant awarded by the DDA to a project will be paid out over time, and the amount released will at no point be greater than the amount of new TIF paid by the developer. So the structure of it would be that we would never pay out more than the amount that we've taken in.
We might commit to a certain amount, but we won't have paid out more than what we've taken in.
Okay. More than we've taken in total, or more than the 25% of the grant?
I think more than we've taken into that point.
So essentially, if it's a 10-year calculation, it could be paid out in the first 2 or 3 years out of the entire TIF that came in. That, I understand that
Yeah,
correctly?
my guess, I'm thinking that yes, that would be a possible scenario. And I'm sorry, but I would appreciate keeping as much flexibility in this as possible. I think that this is the same sort of model that we use for the Main Street Ashley project address.
618 South Main.
618 South Main, thank you. And we may want, again, given certain circumstances, to space it out over more than 10 years.
Well, I'm okay with the flexibility on the payout amounts, as long as that would come back to the board for approval. I just think it's good putting a time limit on it, so that a developer does not come in with expectations that are completely unreasonable, saying, I want, 25% of the TIF for the next 30 or 40 years. There might be a project that would come along that we might want to do that for, but I think if we've set a limit, at least then we're consciously going beyond that limit for a specific, very good reason, rather than just letting it be an open-ended amount for whoever comes along.
And it certainly doesn't preclude them from asking for something different, which they do.
Yes.
Yes, they do.
So I guess I would offer an amendment on that bullet point. DDA has the discretion to provide a grant based on 17 to 25% of the TIF capture of the first 10 years.
All right, is that considered a friendly amendment?
I think those two made it, John and Sandy.
John and Sandy, is that considered friendly?
I would, I think I'd prefer a vote on it, although I'm not particularly thinking
I'll
it's possible.
support.
Yeah, we did have quite a bit of conversation
Yes.
this morning, Roger, at the Partnerships Committee about just this point, and there's sort of a mix of what folks felt. Because the idea of flexibility is important.
And my feeling is that if we put in a specific amount of years, they're going to ask for that specific amount of years. We may want it to be faster or elongated. This, with no years in it, it gives much more flexibility to a future DDA board. Circumstances may be
But
different.
also,
You're not talking about
I'm not talking
how
about
many years we're going to pay it off,
No.
you're talking about a maximum
I'm
amount.
talking about a maximum amount, the calculation, not the payoff amount. That the calculation not be more than 25% of the first 10 years of the TIF. Not that, I'm fine leaving the flexibility on the payout in there.
Okay. Further thinking on this?
I would just like to have Roger read the amendment again.
Okay. The DDA has the discretion to provide a grant based on 17 to 25% of the first 10 years of TIF capture.
Up to?
Up to, yeah. So based on up to 17 to 25% of the first 10 years of the TIF capture. Is that what you...
Can somebody remind me what we did at 618 South Main Street in terms of our cap there? Do you recall, Susan?
I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to go on memory, which is always dangerous. But I think we did establish a calculation using 10 years.
We picked a number, though.
The
Not to
number
exceed
higher.
a certain number.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right.
Given that this is only 4 parcels, that I think it's not that big for the 10-year. I think if there were other parcels that, you know, the potential TIF capture wasn't as high as these particular ones are, then there might be more of a concern. Say if it was something that was only going to kick off an extra 10 grand a year, and what they're requesting is something we want that was going to cost 30 grand or something like that, we may want that flexibility. But given that this is only these 4, and with the exception of maybe Polio lot, all the 10-year ramification relative to the things that we're asking for, I think is going to be okay for this particular one. But we might want to revisit it on other similar proposals for it.
Okay, any further commentary? On the amendment, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. Is there any further discussion on the rest of the motion?
I had a couple, and I will take them separately. On the main, on page 7, 1, 2, on the 5th bullet, the 5th bullet paragraph ends with the DDA has full discretion to determine if a project meets its values and determine whether a grant should be awarded to any project. I appreciate that line, but I think that I would like to strengthen it a little more just by adding a sentence, and I know this is not in one of the action clauses, but in that sentence would be, this policy is not intended to create an expectation that a grant will be awarded. And I think that's important because one of the worries I always have with this is developers are going to say, hey, we're going to go get this money. Well, let's strengthen it to say, not necessarily, folks. It already says it's at our discretion, but I would just like to add the line that says, this policy is not intended to create an expectation that a grant will be awarded.
Friendly, everyone.
Thank you.
Carry on.
And I have one more on page 8, number 9. Given the fact that the city, a couple of factors here, has recently passed a new sustainability policy and set of goals that are very, very ambitious. And I would also note that whenever you do a project like this, at the very end of it, people say, hey, I want to have input in that, and the Energy Commission has this on their agenda for next month. One of the discussion will be about what it is the city is going to look for. And so I'd like to strengthen number 9, where it says environmental design and exceeds city requirements. And again, city requirements, except for some premiums that may be offered, are pretty much based on what the state allows in building code. And I'd just like to add to that, and meets nationally recognized standards. And that doesn't tie us in as going to be LEED Gold, or what's the other energy standard for architects, John? What do they call that one?
What, the energy standard?
Architecture 2030.
Globe.
Thank you. So this would leave us open to being able to let the Energy Commission work on this and then come back with a recommendation that we could consider adding to the policy later. I don't want to hold it up to wait for them. If it would just add in meets nationally recognized standards, and we'll understand that that's to be determined. Because I think we should have a high standard for anybody who's building on property that the city owns.
And do you want it to meets nationally or exceeds nationally recommended standards?
It meets or exceeds nationally recognized standards. Well, depending on the standard, we might make platinum the standard. We don't know that
But
yet.
I think that the intent is that we want to go
Above and beyond.
Above and beyond.
Yep, so thank you very much. It meets or exceeds nationally recognized standards.
And I assume you consider that a friendly amendment. Sorry. Any other comment on this motion? Are you ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes. Thank you.
So that was the vote on the full grant policy, not on any other additional amendments.
Right.
So we are down to the resolution to approve Connecting William Street Strategies Plan. And I would like to move that forward. On page 5, you have the resolution to approve. And this, of course, is the plan and all the documentation.
Second.
So it's moved and seconded?
Moved and seconded.
So I think we'd like to invite Susan to just give a little bit of an overview. Everybody, I think, has seen the Connecting William Street PowerPoint and plans that we've done. Again, we have it here in at least a couple of us have it in these binders so we can answer questions, but our intention was not to go through the entire thing all over again. So Susan, why don't you give us a little overview, and then if people have individual questions, we can always bring up this if anybody needs to see something. And we do have Doug Kelbaugh here who is going to give some additional input.
So briefly, just as a good executive director will do, I will start with a thank you. You are all of you unpaid volunteers, unlike the rest of us. And through the last 15, maybe 18 months, you've been working on this project. And I said this today at the partnerships meeting. I was extraordinarily proud yesterday when I sat with Amber and our intern Tom as they were assembling some of the hard copies of this plan. It's extraordinary what you were able to produce. I want to thank you for your diligence and your commitment to producing something that we know will benefit us in so many ways going forward. Over the last 18 months, this board took to council and got approval to take over the RFP process downtown. We were established as working on those 5 parcels along William Street, the old Klein lot, as some of us call it, the Ashley and William lot, the Polio lot, otherwise known as Main and William, the first floor of 4th and William garage, the old Y lot, now known as the 5th and William lot, and now the top of the underground parking garage. We set out with a belief that what we were going to do was going to build on a lot of good planning. We were not starting from scratch. So the first part of our work was to go back to all the city plans that had, in some cases, just been recently approved. The downtown plan, central area plan, the E2D2 process, CalThorpe, the design guidelines, and more. We took at our heart that this speaks for our community, and our job was to then take it and find a way to give ourselves as a community the chance to speak to it in a more granular way. Part of what we'd seen from a distance, because we really weren't part of the city processes to sell land in the past that was city-owned, was we sent out vague RFPs, said just look to those plans. They'll tell you what to do. And then we would find ourselves somewhat in opposition around these very strange polarities, the most recent one being on the Library Lane garage, a skating rink versus a hotel conference center. That's like saying, I was saying that with someone today, it's like saying a stick and a bagel. How do you choose? I mean, they each have a purpose, but it wasn't the kind of thing that led us as a community to come together around what our goals were. So we asked for and had received this chance to talk with ourselves without any development pressures to find out what we wanted on these sites. So we, again, went to the plans that were in place. We worked with city staff to distill out the goal statements. They were very helpful. There were 100 goal statements, and yet consistency was within all of those from the beginning. We then went to ourselves as a community with a survey and asked, do these values still hold? In essence, that was kind of what we were asking for. We were not doing a mandate around a vote for a particular use on a particular site. We were testing to see if the values still hold, and what we saw consistently, again and again, was what we had said with our earlier planning efforts, we were saying again. Values such as walkability, values such as a density and diversity of uses downtown, values about the quality of the buildings. We said again, as we had said in those earlier plans, this is important to us with whatever we do on William Street. From testing those values, we then developed a series of strategies that we called scenarios to see if people could give us feedback about the kinds of uses and the kinds of massing on the sites, but also how it could be built as a connected William Street plan. And it was not meant to suggest this use or that use, choose one or two. It was meant to tease out, I like this part, I don't like that part. And what, again, we heard through many, many meetings, I think we had at least 20 meetings 1 month alone, probably all told about 30, was consistency again. I might not like that specific building height, but I don't oppose having a building there in the first place, or I don't oppose having things like active uses on the first floor. I do see the value of a connected William Street. So we were teasing out of ourselves through asking for responses many, many areas of overlap, and that was our goal, not to find the areas where we disagreed, but in the more challenging way, find where we actually agree. And what many of you have seen, and again, we can show you the PowerPoint as you've seen it in the past, we keep refining it and keep refining it. We're going to refine it again until we get to the council on Monday. We saw a lot of areas where the plan has to come together and work together. So as an example, we saw that there are opportunities to pursue jobs in the downtown by providing for uses such as large floor plate office. But then we also saw that we had opportunities to provide for housing downtown for the workers who will take those jobs. There are opportunity zones in all of places, but downtown, this has some of the richest. We have our community transit center right there in our study area. So much of our recommendations speak to transportation and taking advantage of that. The great library activity is astonishing. Something like 600,000 people a year walk through those doors, which, to put a sense of perspective on it, is more than twice what the Michigan Theater is drawing through their doors. And that's a great strength for us, but that meant that the uses really needed to complement, particularly their nighttime uses. So we ended up with strategies such as restaurants and residences and hotels and that kind of thing to strengthen the nighttime economy in that area. Again, we can go to the plan. What I can say is pretty consistently, about 95% of the plan, there was very little controversy. Again, some quibbling about some densities and others, but generally there's agreement. We were, again, consistent with ourselves about what our goals were. We strove for diversity in voices. We made a point to reach out to as many neighborhood groups and as many civic organizations as possible. I think it was at least 100 organizations had an outreach from us. We developed a mailing list of interested citizens that was 700 persons strong. We had probably as many as 300 people attending meetings at various points. The survey I mentioned had well over 2,000 people responding. We strove for as diverse a group response as possible, not only as robust a response. Where there is still some dialogue, we heard a little bit about open space today. We are saying different things and yet saying the same thing. We want more open space downtown, whether it's a park, whether it's a plaza, whether it's green, whether it's sized this way or that. There's still some dialogue going on, and it was very helpful to have a Parks Commissioner here today tell us that they have taken that on as part of their work plan, because that's work that needs to continue. And last night I met with the HHSAB board, this is the Housing and Human Services Policy Board, to talk about what we found is in terms of affordable housing, because some of the most significant part of what we do is to make sure we remain that richly diverse downtown. And we teased out from our community that, one, there was no one site that seemed to call out for affordable housing, that this is the one site, but instead there seemed to be a lot of consensus around selling the property and rebuilding the City Housing Trust Fund so that there's flexibility about affordable housing, whether it's built on one of these parcels or elsewhere. That fund seemed to be pretty much embraced by all of us. We also spoke to the zoning needs to be presented to developers who may not be aware it's there, so that we can at least potentially increase the potential to build it downtown. The big one was to lay out for them, even though A2D2 was just recently approved, would they be open to a dialogue about revisiting the density bonuses if they build affordable housing on site, with the idea, what if we had a contribution in lieu potential? And what would it look like, and how much money could we generate for the Housing Trust Fund? Last night, there seemed to be a strong willingness to continue that exploration. So there are many items that are still continuing, even as we go to council on Monday night. Our own streetscape was just mentioned. There's also work that we can be doing at 4th and William. So much of the work is done. In summation, to thank you all for all of your input along the way, and much remains to be done. So with that, if there is an interest in seeing the PowerPoint, we are very expert now at presenting it, very happy to show you the PowerPoint. It keeps getting tweaked, it keeps getting improved upon. It's there for us to share with you if there's an interest.
Seen it.
It'll be presented Monday.
It will be presented Monday, and all of you are welcome. We meet with council at a work session at 7 o'clock on the 14th in council chambers, and it'd be terrific to have you all there as part of the conversation.
Susan, that was a great synopsis of the process. The one thing I'd like to reinforce is that aside from all the community input and all the different neighborhood groups, et cetera, was the fact that we had JGR involved as a consultant, who also had a land use economist as part of the team. And in addition to that, I think it's important that people understand that the Leadership and Outreach Committee was a diverse group of citizens in the community that aren't particularly political or particularly or architects or planners. They're just kind of folks, and with a little bit of emphasis on people that are a bit on the younger side, because I think what's so important is that this is something that should be envisioned for the next 20 or 50 years. So whatever happens, it's going to be significant. But I think it's important that people realize that it's not just this really isn't a DDA initiative. We've been the vehicle, but there have been a lot of people on the bus involved in it.
Absolutely.
One of the other outreach components had been to the university, and that was specifically called out in the resolution from City Council that we seek the talents that are available to us. And with that, we've got Doug Calbaugh here that has put together some work that his students had assembled. And I'll turn it over to Doug, and he can kind of walk us through what his students came up with.
Okay, thank you.
Do we need to speak at this?
This would be great. I think, Joan, you're going to have to move.
Yeah, I'll move.
And yeah, there we go. So I wanted to echo Susan's comments about your Connecting Wayne Street process. I went to more than one event. I thought Amber and the consultants did a great job. One of the issues that's brewing is whether the Library Lane open space should be a plaza or a park. And as you know, public space in American cities is typically streets, plazas, and parks. I'm going to give you three reasons why I think it should be a plaza and not a park. First is the urban rationale. Downtowns need outdoor living rooms. We don't really have many good ones in Ann Arbor. We have great streets, great parks, but we don't have many good plazas or outdoor living rooms. To be a good plaza, you need to be spatially well defined. It's got to be enclosed by buildings on at least 3 sides. The ideal width is about 100 feet. That's the distance at which you can recognize somebody's face, and you can also make some sort of oral contact. They're not great. The best spaces are really not the large mammoth plazas you see in Europe, although they're great for other reasons. It has to be activated by programmed or spontaneous or informal activities for a diverse demographic cohort. So it's not dominated by rich, poor, or anybody in between, students, whatever, dogs. The question and the ideal is to have some balance. It has to have lots of entrances, windows, retail on the edges, as well as eyes on the plaza. And this is why Liberty Plaza will never be a plaza, however much you redesign it, because only one side will have any streets and doors on it. It'll be a park, in my opinion, forever. It can be a better park, but it will not be a plaza in the traditional sense. You really need preferably 3, 4, at least 2 sides. And the historic building to the south will never have windows and doors opening. It's raised up. So it's not going to be the plaza that people are hoping for. However, this site could be that very plaza. I guess this is advanced, yeah. Bringing me to the second reason, the architectural rationale. A plaza is better suited structurally for construction on top of a parking garage in a park. To do a good park, you need deep soil, because you need good-sized trees, and therefore you need a really strong structure, and the roof is strong. The area that we sort of hope will become a park is not as strong as the rest, but even if it was, it wouldn't really be strong enough for this sort of berming and to make a good park. It will always be a little small to be a park, and I think it'll have inadequate plantings. Doesn't mean that the plaza can't have trees, for sure. It can, it must. It will benefit. The third is a little more abstract, the environmental rationale. It's greener to have a complete dense downtown than suburban sprawl. People live downtown have smaller ecological footprints than people live in the suburbs. It's a little counterintuitive, but it's true. So what we need is to get more permanent residents living downtown, and to do that, a plaza, I think, will actually provide more amenity and benefit than another small park, or another park, period. But generally, the more people live downtown, the less people live in the suburbs, the smaller the ecological footprint for Ann Arbor. It's environmentally greener, not chromatically, not leafier, but it's environmentally greener. It's the environmental paradox of urbanism. So you all know, does this have a...
So, I don't know if it does or this does.
Ah, great, thank you. So, as you know, this is the William Street corridor. Here's William Street, here's Liberty, here's your bailiwick. I just want to point out that from Division over to about Ann and down to about Ashley or First and back over and around, that, which is what I call the downtown core, has very few permanent residents, actually, living in it. If you look, count them up, not very many at all. Most of the rental units are outside that core. So yes, we do need more offices and large floor plate offices, but we also need more permanent residents. And as we pass this slide, I want to point out that I agree with the comments about the proposal at 413 Huron. It's not only massive, it completely blankets and overshadows the housing to the north, and it also juts way out into Huron because Huron narrows there. It's not within that core anyway. So here's a student project that puts housing above a plaza. We're sort of standing in front of the library. This is Fifth Avenue. This is Library Lane. There's no context shown. This is a plaza. It's about 100 by 100. But if you close off Library Lane, in fact, it can be 100 by 150 because cars can still come in and out of the parking garage from Division. So for events, it could be a larger plaza. Now, why does this extend out? Because the plaza could be bigger if it didn't. It's because we need eateries, retail, and other active, transparent activities opening, spilling out onto the plaza. The side of the earthen jar will not ever be an adequate activator of a plaza. It's raised up, it's the wrong sort of architecture, it's where the stairwell is. It's the same problem with the historic house at Liberty Plaza. So it's important that this come out all the way and form an outdoor room. So there's sides here, here, and then the third side is, of course, the library, which will be built over here. This is housing. It could be hotel, it could be office. I think housing, this is a mix of housing. Importantly, there's some housing in the second, third floor of the podium as well, but this is all retail. In fact, that's the Arc, believe it or not, or some other musical venue that's moved there, and indeed there's a music school. Now, what's interesting about this project is how do we get the people from this plaza over to Liberty Plaza? They can't really walk through at ground level because they intersect the cars going in and out of the garage. So cleverly, this team has a public exterior street that goes up with shops raised along it so that when you come out the other side, sorry, no context, there's actually a true green part with a south-facing slope. The library would be over here, the library lane's over here, and this could connect through to Liberty Plaza, which really ought to be Liberty Park. So there could be, now this requires the cooperation of Bill Martin and Son. This would have to be called Martin Park, I think. Maybe he might go for it, but it's a very clever way to make to connect this desire line from the library and the William Street through on the diagonal all the way to Liberty by going up a level. And then, I mean, this could be deep soil with real trees and so on. It wouldn't have to be a sort of make-believe park. So here's the plan. There's the plaza. That's about 90 by 100, but as I said, it's a lot bigger if you close this off. And of course, here's Library Lane. There's the parking that's hard to get around, the entrance and exit, so you go up and over. There's the park, south face. And if Martin ever built a newer building, which is quite likely, it could have a frontage that spills out onto this south-facing grass lawn. It'd be a great place for picnicking. This would be also much quieter than out here, which is the rush and bustle of Fifth Avenue. There's the Arc. These are various eateries and other retail establishments. Here's another student project. Again, housing looking down on that very same plaza. That's the little wing that sticks out. That's the earthen jar. That has a plaza, a raised deck, not a plaza. For the occupants, that's the public plaza. There's an opening here that, as you know, a beautiful opening down into the parking, which is left out of this drawing. This is a transit hub over here. Here's Fifth. There's the library. That kind of plaza. So along William Street, which will never be as active as Liberty in my opinion, because on the left side over here, there are a lot of residential units, either by use or by original purpose. So it'll never be the sort of connector that Liberty is, but indeed there can be lots of retail. In this case, it opens into a courtyard. And this shows, well, here, this is William. The library should be there. This
Or
is,
about Muley.
yeah, more or less. There's Ann, there's the parking garage. Here's about a 14-story building and with a 10-story wing and another lower wing. And it steps down to respect the residential, or at least the lower scale of William, but it's 2 buildings. There's a plaza, a public plaza. There's actually a daycare center, which is good there, a transit center, rooftop gardening or PVs or both, etc. Point is, you can have more than one building. It doesn't have to be a big, flat, pancake, full floor plate office building. It can be 2 buildings easily, 1 residential, maybe 1 office. This happens to be all residential because we think there's still a dearth of permanent dwelling units downtown. Almost done here. This is hovering above the railroad tracks, looking now east towards the campus. That would be Main Street. That's the parking garage. That's the Y, former Y site. There's the Federal Building. Here's Main Street. This is what used to be called the Klein Lot. I think you're calling it Ashley and William. We have many other examples for this site, but I wasn't given enough time to show you any others. So this one, it opens a plaza through from Ashley to Main Street, so that we not only get a plaza over here, up there, that we just talked about, but there could be a plaza that activates the linear public realm, the Great Corridor of Maine, by taking out a few buildings here. And then it opens back through all the way to Ashley. In this case, there's a sort of semi-public or semi-private courtyard for housing. Maybe this would be more affordable, this might be more market rate. But this is looking from Maine back to what is now the alley, and a sort of circuitous but tantalizingly tempting way to get through. So that would be Grazi's, basically. And this is a sort of little forecourt. This could be another kind of plaza. Maybe a little more commercial, a little less civic than the one we just described. And then the frontage along Ashley could be something like this, sort of a podium, 3 stories of housing with taller buildings in the back, 2 or 3, and a different kind of retail. We think Ashley needs large retail, like 3 chairs, and downtown home and garden, so on. Not the kind of impulse shopping you do on Main. Or Liberty, would allow bigger retailers to move into the downtown. Here's another proposal that also shows quite a number of units added. In this case, 3 towers are possible at such a linear site. And here the plaza is a larger one connecting. It's a large plaza with a small, narrow plaza through to Main Street, where the other one was a large plaza on Main and then a narrow passage through. There are lots of these possibilities, but I just wanted to end on this dream of mine, which is a pedestrian path from the Greenway to the campus. It's possible to start in the Greenway, come up a hill climb, go through that plaza I just showed you, take another building or 2, and either have a narrow or wide plaza at Main, cross Main, take one of those 1-story buildings, turn it into a galleria, an arcade, go through your parking garage along the right-of-way that the feds have generously given to the transit center, down Library Lane. All you need is to go get through a couple blocks and get along or through your parking garage into Nichols Arcade and all the way to the campus, with a completely different experience for connecting downtown and sort of State Street and the university. We don't want it to compete with Liberty, of course. That's where the more eggs are in the basket already, and more eggs should be placed. William will never be as much of a connector because see all this residential character here? It'll be much more of a one-sided street than Liberty. So Liberty, this is something to come over time perhaps. Very different feel. And then again, William has yet another feel, and Washington has yet another feel. So there are bigger ideas afoot here that you're part of, and I think the plaza right there is the biggest block in downtown. It's too big. That's why Library Lane is such a great idea. It's a perfect place for a plaza, and maybe Martin Memorial Park.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
So John, you missed that, but this is the idea of connecting all the way through.
I'm sorry, I had
To the
take a
Greenway.
call.
Yeah, from the
Greenway.
Greenway all the way. I can show it to you later.
So we still have the
Resolution is on the table.
Has it been moved and seconded?
It has been
Yes.
moved and seconded. I think we've gathered about as much data as we possibly can. Is there any other input from the board?
John?
You can go first.
Just
Oh,
to,
okay.
real quick, the what is, and this was brought up in partnership by Lee, and I appreciate it, is assuming this is approved today, we've done what we've asked very happily and rigorously, but it also will coincide with this idea of a snapshot. But I think it's important to say that we've done all this, we've collected all of this, and the minute you collect data that's dynamic, especially around people's opinions and things that have market forces and macro forces, the data degrades and it becomes either more relevant or less relevant as it goes. And so I think from the standpoint of we've accomplished a monumental task, and that's great, but then also like many of these things that are asked, they're often sometimes trotted out years, if not decades later, as proof of something. And this was an amalgamation of community values of a point in time. And I think that's important, especially as we're going into a broader community discussion and with council to look at it, to say that this might not hold up as well on a shelf for 10 years. As it were.
We hope it won't have to.
We certainly hope that, but in terms of what we were asked to do, it's not.
John?
I appreciate all the work was done, and the DDA, I think, really taken this on and met their timelines, and I look forward to the formal presentation. I've seen the presentation a couple of times, and it does continue to evolve. And recognizing that it is continuing to evolve, and I have to consider this twice because it'll be at City Council. But I was looking at the resolve clause, and the DDA approves the Connecting William Street plan and anticipates that the plan will be presented to City Council later this month with the expectation of working to implement this plan in the future. And it's a long sentence, but I would like to propose, and I'll tell you why first. We heard from the Parks Commission tonight that they are behind the DDA in this process of looking at downtown, but they're actively engaged in it. I remember going to talk to them last fall and talking about the need to engage on downtown parks, and if there are going to be plazas that are managed, I really appreciate that part of the grant proposal where plazas would be managed and developed by and taken care of by someone else, because that's a real burden. But understanding that they're going to have input, as I mentioned earlier, I think the Energy Commission is going to have some input on the grant program and on what's called for. That I would just put a comma after the word future and say, the expectation of working to implement this plan in the future, following further input from city commissions and the public. And I wondered if that was friendly to the movers of the resolution, just recognizing the fact that there's going to be further input before we have a really complete product. The DDA has done their job, but there's going to be input from others before it's ready to implement.
Okay, the movers of the motion, or you, John? What's your feeling about that?
Unfortunately, not friendly.
Well, that's okay. So I would
it would be, let's see if it might be friendly with just a change in a wording. Instead of following future input, it would be in conjunction with future input from...
Yes, so the implementation would be in conjunction with, I'm happy with that.
In conjunction with
So
further input?
From city commissions and the public.
Mm-hmm. Is that a friendly amendment, Joe?
That's my suggestion, so
So
that would make it friendly.
I'm willing to change what I'm putting forward.
Yep, which I think is a significantly different statement, and if that's
fine,
then I find that friendly.
I really just want the recognition that there's more work to be done, but the DDA, I'm happy, has done a great job. They've brought this to us. They've met their timelines, but there's other aspects to be considered, and they will be, of course, before council is finished with this.
And it's, in the end, council's decision.
And I think the input from Parks and Energy and who knows who else in the city, and of course from the public, there'll be more of that. Is very important. So. if that's
John?
right.
I guess I would also encourage, though, that this process already has gone on a year and a half, and so I'd hope to see that that there be some timeliness to that response with a goal
Me
of
too.
a specific. I'd be anxious to see specific dates.
Council can set, I don't think the Energy Commission will take long. Council can set a timeline and make requests in parks that they move along this along.
I think it's important because there's a fair amount of momentum that's been going on, and as Newcomb says, things get old, and we're just at such a interesting time to spur economic development downtown that I think it really behooves the community to move as quickly as possible on it.
And granularly, this just suggests, as a possible next step, us preparing RFQs, which is many, many steps from getting anything built, let alone land being sold. Right. Yeah. But I'd hate to see that particular thing being viewed as the minute you pull the proverbial trigger on that, everything is already put into motion. This has already kind of been put into motion in a certain regard. So.
And I think Newcomb's point is particularly well taken. This is a snapshot in time, and if we let it sit around too long, it will go the way of some other plans. So. Any further discussion on this motion as amended? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes. Thank you, Sandy and Joan. You've done a fantastic job. And particularly Amber and
It looks like we have no more bullets under our subcommittee report.
Okay, we're finished.
We'll just say that our next meeting is Wednesday, February 13th at 9 a.m.
I believe you beat Steve's record for
Right.
a committee report.
Now, the Operations Committee, Mr. Hewitt, you're on.
Okay, I will attempt to make this brief, although I would like to thank Professor Kelbaugh for recognizing my intention when we designed Library Lane into a parking structure, that it could ultimately connect the two ends of the downtown. That's something I've been thinking about for a long time too, so glad you recognized it. First, we have a booklet that is the report from our auditors. I won't go through I reported on this preliminarily last month, and I won't go through all the details on it, but if you do go to the last page, I'll just read, I think, what is the pertinent sentence of this. The results of our test disclose no incidents of noncompliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government auditing standards. In other words, they have a completely clean audit with no recommendations for any changes or in either figures or in procedures.
Thank you to you and to Joe Morehouse.
I would move we accept the audit.
So moved. Is there support?
Support.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Audit is accepted. Thank you. Moving right along.
Moving right along to the November parking report, which is on page 15. And we see by the overall numbers, we can continue to have growth within the system, both in hourly patrons and especially in revenue increase. Part of this, there were some additional rate increases and various rate increases that did go into effect in September. So about half of our revenue increases related to rate increases, but the other roughly 7% is the result of more usage of the system. So for what we're continuing the trend that we have seen for about almost a year and a half now of very steady growth of use within the parking system. Any questions? Okay, very good. Go on to the resolution to approve a budget revision for fiscal year 2012-2013. It is on page 16. And I'd like to move this resolution.
Is there support? Support. It's been moved and supported.
You'll see the revised budget details The major changes are on the following pages, but quite simply, we're doing this because the completion of the Library Lane parking structure occurred approximately at the end of our fiscal year. We were not sure when we did our initial budget whether all the expenses for that parking structure would be in last fiscal year or the current fiscal year. Because of accounting requirements that we not show any deficit in any of our funds, we put the entire cost related to that parking structure in last fiscal year. And indeed, it was not completed, nor, in fact, we still have a few outstanding bills on it that we haven't received requests for yet. So there are still some payments, although we know exactly where we're going to be on it. So the major change on this is to the capital costs line, right toward this third from above the total expenses. The $5,898,000 line on the old budget was $3,484,000. So there's about a $2.4 million increase in the capital expenditures. This is reflected in approximately that amount not being spent in the last fiscal year. So we're simply reflecting this budget is reflecting the reality of how payments were made on it. There are a few other small adjustments. We did move $250,000 additional money from the parking fund into the parking maintenance fund to make sure that stays at a comfortable level. That's just an internal movement from one fund to the other. The overall housing fund did decrease by $154,000 because we did not pay the Near North grant for $400,000, which fell through, but we did pay out $246,000 to the Baker Commons grant. So it resulted in a net of $154,000 less. Those are all the major. There are a few small minor things, but those are the overview. I would point out, though, is now $200,000 off based on results of
today.
Today, but since I went, this was done after. So, move the resolution. I and with Joe's help will answer any questions.
Questions, friends? No questions. Are you ready to vote to accept the budget? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No opposition. Okay, Roger, thank you.
Okay, on page 22, we have a resolution also dealing with the new payment in lieu of parking ordinance, part of the new zoning ordinance. This concerns the property between Huron and William Street, known as the Varsity. They were going to have all their required parking on site, but apparently they were taking credit for zip cars as some of that, and that agreement fell through on whatever reasons. So they ended up, I believe, 2 or 4 parking spaces short. So they would like to participate for the amount of 4 parking spaces on the parking in lieu of program, so they meet the ordinance requirements. So this does not specify where those parking spaces will be located, just that we will accommodate them within the parking system.
I'd move the resolution.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any comment, questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay. Next meeting.
Next meeting will be on Friday, January 25th at 11 a.m., moving it to Friday and a week earlier to accommodate both John and my busy schedules.
Fair enough. Okay. Other DDA business, opportunity to meet with the Main Street Biz. Susan.
Yeah, at our retreat, we had a pretty good discussion about the value of biz organizations and how they were being used across the country to provide what we all now refer to as clean and safe services. And we have established a meeting with the Biz Board on the 22nd, Tuesday morning. They're going to hold their regular meeting, and then those that are interested, they welcomed us to come there and ask them questions. I've teed up a few questions for them, such as, did you have out-of-town property owners? Help us to understand, was it all locally owned and therefore it went smoothly? Or is it something where other sections of our downtown might have an opportunity to do this? Because again, they have the same kind of mix. We would like to ask that question. Do they have the kind of mix that we have in other corners of downtown? Asking why they chose the certain services that they offer. Asking what the assessments look like per property owner. So it's a chance to get a little bit granular with the biz that we've had. I've attended a couple of their meetings, and we have a board member on the biz. They've been very successful, and I know the neighborhood very much is excited about the services being provided, so much so that nearby businesses, as well as property owners, have contacted the biz in hopes that it could be expanded. So just to let you know, there's that meeting. If some of you have some curiosity and want to explore with the biz board how it came to be and what they might be doing in the future, it's just a chance to meet.
All right, thank you. Are there any other DDA business items?
I just want to make note, as we're starting this, our first meeting of the year, that there's a meeting that occurs on the first Tuesday at 10:15 in this room, and it's the Downtown Marketing Task Force. And it is, I think, a valuable time that DDA members could be updated from the heads of the various business associations about what's going on. And there's several DDA members that attend when they can, and I just wanted to put it on the calendar for other DDA members if you're available. I know they have a lot of meetings to go to, but it's a productive meeting, and at our next one we'll be learning, hearing a report from the Convention and Visitors Bureau about their efforts in downtown and what they're doing to promote the area.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anyone from the audience who wishes to speak to us? Roger's report chased them along. Motion to adjourn. Okay, we stand adjourned.